right. Let's go live from Vanadzor, Armenia. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here. And I was supposed to be on the way to Thailand right now to cover the war there, but the war ended. Thank heaven. And not just thank heaven for all the people that would have been affected by the war, but thank heaven that I didn't have to spend 24 hours sitting on airplanes. I'm very excited about that. So I get to spend more time with my grandbaby here in northern Armenia. So I'm going to be here for a few more days. And then we've got a real special trip coming up that you're going to want to follow for sure. It's going to be an adventure that Nathan and I are taking. So stay tuned for that. Now, today, we're talking about humanitarian aid because that's the topic of the day in the media news cycle right now. It's all about humanitarian aid. It's all about more aid needs to go to Gaza. And there's not enough aid going to Gaza. And the people in Gaza deserve all this aid. And, and then there are a lot of people who understand that while humanitarian aid is supposed to save lives, in many cases, it just prolongs the suffering. It can prop up corrupt regimes, and it can be used as a political weapon. With that in mind, we're going to talk about what would be the best option for Gaza right now. Now, before we do that, I want to go and just knock this out real quick and to talk about our sponsor, Preserve Gold. Many of you have been getting in touch with Preserve Gold and have told me that it is that they're doing a great job. So let me guess, you got a retirement account that's full of paper promises, and every time you watch me go live from some new war zone, you kind of feel it in your gut, like, oh man, I just lost money. Well, here's a wild idea. What if your nest egg wasn't just like, numbers on a screen? What if you could actually hold your wealth like in your hands? That's what gold does for you. Not digital gold, not paper gold, actual physical gold. It's not Wall Street voodoo. It's just time-tested, real assets. It doesn't crash when Twitter freaks out. It doesn't vanish when the Fed, adjusts its outlook or whatever. It just sits there and quietly holds its value like it's done for thousands of years through wars and crashes and clown shows in Congress. That's why I work with Preserve Gold, because they make it easy, honest, and smart. You get real answers from real people and no games. So I want you to text Chuck to 50505 and get your free wealth protection guide from Preserve Gold and see how, if you are able to transfer part of your IRA over to them, you could get up to $15,000 in free gold. So seriously, don't wait for the next, once in a generation crisis. Text Chuck to 50505 right now. All right, let's move on. Thank you very much to Preserve Gold. All right. So as I said, aid is all over the media, all over social media, and global humanitarian aid has never been bigger. It's across the globe, we're talking like $60 billion a year is given to these aid organizations like the United Nations, UNHCR, UNRWA. There's 900 different acronyms that the UN has come up with for all the different aid organizations. And there's tons of them out there. Now, despite $60 billion a year being given to these NGOs, places like Gaza, you could look at Haiti, you could look at most of sub-Saharan Africa, all those places remain locked in poverty and dysfunction and violence. And I'm going to mention several books to you today that talk about why aid doesn't work. And I want you to, if you're the reading type, go get those books and read them, because one of these books, which is called When Helping Hurts, absolutely changed my life. Totally changed the way that I see charitable giving, for sure. Now, PC says they want Israel to accept UNRWA back. Yeah, good luck with that. Not happening. So as I mention these books, maybe I'll put them down here in the chat. Let's see here. So the first one I'm going to talk about is from Graham Hancock, and it's called Lords of Poverty. Graham Hancock. So you can get it down there. Lords of Poverty. Now, in that book, he writes that, aid it's not a charity anymore. It's now an industry. It's not a solution, right, for poverty in any way. But it's a self-perpetuating complex that fuels salaries, conferences, tons of bureaucracy. And here's the big thing about it. It doesn't matter what the outcome is of the giving. There's no oversight. There's nobody saying, well, wait a minute, you didn't actually help anybody. They just keep asking for more and more and more money. And I believe, without a doubt, this is one of the reasons why the UNHCR and the United Nations in Gaza and all the other aid NGOs are fighting so hard against GHF, because GHF has already sucked up over $100 million of that aid money, and that's $100 million that's not going to the UN. And they are really upset about GHF horning in on their territory and doing a much better job at actually delivering the aid. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute as well. So if we look at Gaza, Gaza is a perfect poster child for why aid is not always the answer, and how aid can be weaponized, and very often is weaponized and politicized by various governments and other organizations. So let's take a look at Gaza. You got 2.2 million people. Now keep this in mind. Gazans represent 0.43% of the Arab Muslim world. Okay? If you just take the 22 Arab Muslim countries, that doesn't include non-Arab Muslim countries like Indonesia and places like that, but just the Arab Muslim countries, that's 515 million people, half again the size of the United States. And the Gazans make up less than half of 1% of that total. And the reason I say that is because if the Arab Muslim world, and we're talking Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, etc., wanted to actually fix the problem of poverty in Gaza, it would be a rounding error to allow the Gazans to move to whatever Arab country they wanted. If you distributed them around the various Arab countries, they would hardly be noticeable as far as a percentage of the population. But none of them, not one, none of them have opened their doors to the Gazans. Now, France did the other day, and they're not an Arab Muslim country, I mean, on paper, but in reality, they're becoming one very quickly. And so as the IDF has been talking about moving people out of Gaza, allowing people to leave, opening a corridor that would allow Gazans who want to leave to voluntarily relocate to other countries. That doing that has really scared the rest of the Arab Muslim world, because they're all looking at this and going, oh, geez, we're going to get pressured into taking some of these Gazans, and we don't want them. So this is why I believe you are seeing now the Arab League yesterday called on, condemned the October 7th massacre for the first time since October 7th, called on Hamas to lay down their arms and surrender and give back the hostages. This is the Arab League. Now, I want you to understand, I want you to think about the irony here. The Arabs, the Muslims in all these other Muslim countries, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Qatar, UAE, etc., they're all now calling on Hamas to lay down their arms, give up the hostages, and surrender. Meanwhile, Western non-Muslim countries like Canada and the UK and Portugal and Spain and Germany and, no, not Germany, France, are all saying, we're going to recognize the Gazans as a Palestinian state. Now, they can't, thank you, KP1, very kind of you, get Rubina a treat. Well, we're hoping we bought her a fan. I bought her a air conditioner today because it was super hot here. It's cooled off now. But thank you very much, KP1. Very nice of you. So just think of the irony here. All these Muslim countries are going, wait a minute, we're looking ahead here and we're seeing that, oh my goodness, it might actually come to pass that Gazans get let out of Gaza and sent elsewhere, and that would be really bad for us. We don't really want that problem in our country. So they're all just saying, hey, Hamas, surrender. It's time to surrender. Lay down your arms, please. Because why are they doing that? Did they suddenly grow a conscience? Did they suddenly stop supporting their Muslim brothers? No, they never cared about the Gazans, except for the fact that the Gazans are a weapon that they use against Israel. The Gazans are a proxy. So you might say, well, wait a minute, we know that Gaza was funded by Iran. Yeah, so it was definitely a direct proxy of Iran. But the other Muslim countries in the region didn't really mind that so much, because the Gazans were being used as a bludgeon against Israel. Now they're seeing things are not going their way. And the Arab League is starting to go, wait, if we're going to preserve Gazans in Gaza so that we can still use them as a battering ram against Israel and the United States, they've got to be, they have to stay in Gaza. They can't be allowed to leave. That'd be terrible. Now, Israel has a history of encouraging Gazans to exercise, rather than provide aid, let's provide some liberty to Gazans. Now, since October 7th, that's all bets are off. I mean, that has stopped. But before October 7th, there were 30,000 Gazans that crossed into Israel every day for work. And they earned 5 times as much in Israel as they could in Gaza. So it was a huge cash flow into Gaza. All that money going back into Gaza it helped Gaza a lot. But of course, after the October 7 attacks, that ended. And that was Gaza's, other than aid, its only real economic lifeline that wasn't predicated on aid. It was actually an exchange of, work for hire. over the last, well, since the Oslo Accords took place in 1990, what was that, three? There's been more than $40 billion given to Gaza in aid. And Gazans cannot survive without that aid. Gaza was quite a bit more verdant and productive agriculturally before the Israelis pulled out in 2005. But when the Israelis pulled out, they left behind probably $1 billion agricultural industry, greenhouses, and all of that. What the Gazans do? Immediately burned all those things down. Yeah, they didn't come in and take them over and put them to work growing stuff. Growing stuff. Why would you do that? I mean, that takes time and effort, and you're not going to be able to sell the stuff you grow because everybody's used to getting everything for free, or at least some of it for free. The rest you have to pay Hamas to get. So under that old model, the United Nations, World Food Program, all those guys brought the aid into Gaza, gave it to Hamas, who then sold it to the people or taxed it in one way or another. That was a huge part of how Hamas maintained its rule over the people. It was one of the reasons why they started this hunger campaign in the media to try to convince the world, which they did very successfully, that everyone in Gaza was starving to death, because now that the UN is delivering aid again, they could have done it all along, but they just chose not to during this hunger campaign. Now that the UN is delivering that aid again, there are full markets in places like Beit Hanun and Han Yunis. The markets are full. Marketplaces are bustling with activity. I saw a picture today of some cans of baby formula that were stacked up on a merchant's table there. And Hamas was selling that baby formula for $130 a can. $130 a can. This is baby formula that was brought in as aid that was supposed to be given out to the people for free. And now if you want to buy it, you got to pay $130 a can. Through some really perverse, ugly set of machinations, logical contortions, the media is somehow blaming that on Israel, saying, well, that's Israel's fault. Now, under this new method through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, aid bypasses Hamas and goes straight to the people. And it has been extremely effective in the few places where they're doing it at actually getting that aid out to the people. So, of course, the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, sets their hair on fire and starts to lie about casualties to turn that to get their hands on more of that aid so they can use it to beat up Israel some more. And this is, so I mean, you could make a point that the aid itself is the weapon, but I think more rightly put, the aid is the ammunition. And the Gazan people are the weapon. And the people who are wielding that weapon are the United Nations, Hamas, Iran, and yes, the entire Arab world. Yesterday, Egypt airdropped aid into Gaza. There was videos coming out of aid dropping on top of people's tents. Hopefully there were not people inside those tents. If there were and people died, The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation did not report on it, at least did not credit it to the airdrops. They just said 130 people died waiting for aid. What they're trying to do is blame that on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is getting very good at filming everything around their distributions. And when the media comes out and parrots whatever the Gaza Health Ministry puts out, 180 kids died waiting in line for food at the GHF site today. The GHF just releases the video of that site and says, show us where that happened. Didn't happen. And they're calling their bluff. Now, according to the UN's own data, less than 15% of the aid convoys that they have brought into Gaza actually reach the distribution sites. Most of them are either hijacked or looted. 85% of them hijacked or looted. So if you're starting to get the sense that the goal here of the United Nations, the Arab League, Hamas, Iran, etc., is not to feed the Gazans, it's to keep them hungry, you're on the right track. These people want to keep the Gazans hungry so that they can be used against Israel. Now, I don't know if you remember that far back, but before October 7th, the left was still talking about hunger in Gaza, that there was starvation in Gaza. They called it an open air prison camp, a concentration camp, a death camp, a prison. All the while, billions of dollars of aid was being pumped into Gaza, more aid per capita than almost any other charitable giving on the planet. I mean, there's some other ones that sort of wreck the curve, like Vanuatu or something, where there's 12 people and they get, $100,000 of aid, and it divided up, it's more. But as far as major aid distributions go, Gaza is top of the list. The people of Gaza get more aid than anybody else on the planet. Now, the Gaza Health Ministry themselves claim that something like 44 people have died of hunger during this supposed famine in Gaza. This year in Sudan, more than 150,000 people have starved to death. Nobody cares. Nobody's pointing that out. Nobody's, getting all up in arms about that, because, that's just those little brown people killing each other. They don't really matter. No, what really matters is they don't have any political value as weapons. So the people in Sudan starving to death every day don't matter, because the left can't use their starvation to beat up Israel or the United States. There's no way for them to weaponize that. So they just don't care. They only care about Gaza because they want to keep Gaza they want to keep them suffering. And this is extremely cruel on the part of the United Nations. It's extremely cruel on the part of the Arab League to very cynically take steps that certainly will lead to more suffering in Gaza, because they want to keep Gaza the way it is. Now, this is not anything new. This has happened throughout history. You can go back to Haiti after the earthquake in 2010. I was there a couple days after the earthquake and spent a few weeks there reporting on the crisis. That was one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in my life. And they raised a ton of money. $13 billion in pledges came in. The Red Cross alone raised $500 million. And an audit that happened years later found out that with that $500 million, the Red Cross built 6 permanent homes. Just 6 homes for $500,000. I'm sorry, half a billion bucks. Not $500,000, $500 million. I stayed in a hotel in Port-au-Prince one time. This is after it's a more recent trip. It's 13 stories tall, but only the first 4 stories are finished. It's just a regular hotel. It's nothing fancy. It certainly was not super comfortable. It did have air conditioning, which made me praise Jesus up one side and down the other. But it was not that fancy of a hotel. And like I say, it's only 4 floors of rooms, and the other 13 floors are unfinished. I mean, all the way up to the 13th floor is unfinished. They didn't have a swimming pool that worked. The restaurant was nothing to, sneeze at. And they told me that hotel had been built with some of the aid money that had been sent to Haiti after the earthquake. And they had spent $1.1 billion on that 4-floor hotel. Now, look at like the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. I believe that cost, I want to say 140 million, something like that. And it's, I don't know, 30 floors tall and much larger and much fancier, and everything functions. So they spent $1.1 billion building this crappy hotel in Port-au-Prince. Where did all that money go? Well, it went into people's pockets. Haiti's government is so corrupt. It scores 16 out of 100 on transparency for Transparency International's corruption index. That ranks them about 170 out of 180 globally, countries globally. They're in the bottom 10 or 12 countries on planet Earth in terms of transparency. You know who else is down there? Azerbaijan and Iran and Russia, places like that. The vast majority of the aid that went to Haiti went to NGOs, not Haitians. And the NGOs used it to create dependence. I mean, to say nothing of the waste and fraud and abuse. They used it to turn Haiti into dependistan. And Haiti is 10 times worse today than it was after the earthquake. I kid you not. When I went back to Haiti with Victor Marx last year, I was blown away. Blown away. You can tell that Haiti has emptied out significantly, and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Haitians have come to the United States illegally under the Biden administration. I've met some of those Haitians. Good people. And you can't blame them for wanting to leave Haiti. The problem is those people were not, those Haitians were not in Haiti when they decided to come to the United States. They had already been living in places like Peru and Chile and Brazil for years, 4 or 5 years before they made the decision to go north and get to the United States because Biden had open the floodgates. But all of that aid going into Haiti has not rebuilt the country. It's made it worse, much, much worse. Let's move on to Afghanistan. You hear me say often that the United States spent $1 billion a week for 20 years in Afghanistan. Of that, more than $35 billion was straight up humanitarian aid. And that was just between 2002 and 2009. We were there till 2019 or 20, right? 21, 20, 21. I forget. August 2021, I guess, is when we pulled out. So just between 2002 and 2009, the U.S. pumped $35 billion into Afghanistan. Later audits found that up to 86% of that money was misused in some way. 40% of it was stolen by warlords or the Taliban. So instead of stabilizing the country, what we did is we funded the insurgency that was fighting our troops. We paid the Taliban to kill American soldiers. That is a proven fact. If you're starting to understand why Americans are really fed up with giving money to every country on planet Earth, maybe you can start to understand that now. Now, 20 years after we entered Afghanistan, we just turned it back over to the Taliban again. And then it didn't stop. We continued giving like $40 million a month to the Taliban up until President Trump put a stop to that. Which, kudos to President Trump. That was, I mean, that was such a no-brainer. Holy cow. Okay, now let's turn to the granddaddy of all aid scams, Sub-Saharan Africa. Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, places like that. Since the 1960s, more than $1 trillion in aid has been pumped into those countries. And virtually every one of those countries is poorer now than they were 50 years ago. So how can you give them $1 trillion and make them poorer? Well, because we're not giving it to the people and where the people can put it into the economy and lift the economy out of poverty. We're giving it to the governments of those countries. The governments of those countries then steal it all. And eventually there's a coup because the guy is so corrupt, people just can't stand it anymore. And they kick out the president. And he goes and takes his billions of ill-gotten gains, moves to Paris or London, and lives out the rest of his life in luxury. That is the cycle down there. Aid in Africa has destroyed markets. It's facilitated and entrenched corruption, and it's made poverty so durable that, like I said, many people have no hope of ever knowing anything else. One other thing that it's done is it's fueled the global migration movement, global mass migration, all across Africa, up into Europe, into the United States, and elsewhere. Because this money that we have sent to those countries has made them so poor that they can't stand to live there anymore. And they decide, well, I'm going to leave and go to the place where all the money's coming from. Go get me some of that directly. Now, there's another good book I want to point out to you. And it's by this author who's a very interesting lady. Born in Zambia. She's an economist. And in 2009, she wrote a book called Dead Aid. And her name is Dambisa Moyo. Now, Dead Aid is an incredible study in the unmitigated disaster that is economic, political, and humanitarian aid. And I highly recommend you read this book. Now, she grew up in Zambia, so she knows what she's talking about. She's worked for the World Bank and been an advisor to Goldman Sachs. Her arguments are that $1 trillion in aid that was given to Africa did nothing. It created dependency, not development. That aid fuels corruption, it delays reform, and it keeps dictators in power because it gives them the wherewithal to protect themselves. On top of that, pumping billions of dollars of free foreign goods into local economies. I'm going to get back to Gaza here in a minute, so stay tuned. This is going somewhere here. Pumping all those free foreign goods into local economies destroy the markets in those economies. We've seen that in Panama, where I live. A church group will come down, bring 30 duffel bags full of clothing to give away to the poor little brown people. They're so poor. So they put it all on tables out in front of the church, and the whole neighborhood swarms. Panamanians, man, if something's being given away or sold cheap, everybody comes. They will show up. And they come like a bunch of locusts and take all that clothes. You see, 60-year-old men walking off with a handful of bras and stuff. You're like, what are they going to do with all that? But the one clothing store in our town has no sales that month and has a hard time struggling not to go out of business. That's, you scale that up to an industrial scale, and that's what you see across Africa. Grain donations collapse African farming. On top of that, aid, this is another argument that's made by Dambisa Moyo, that aid kills foreign direct investment. When you look at the countries that receive the most aid on planet Earth, that's the same list of countries that get the least amount of foreign direct investment. Why? Well, why would you risk your capital in a country where aid distorts the prices, is politically motivated, and the people are kept in poverty? Now, Dambisa Moyo puts out some better alternatives. She says, we've got to end unconditional aid. And instead of giving aid to Gaza, encourage trade, encourage foreign investment, and encourage local entrepreneurship. You push for microfinance, which is a fancy term for like what we're doing with these single mothers in Colombia. We've met these Venezuelan refugees in Colombia. They were trying to stay out of prostitution, and they were not doing too well at that because they couldn't make any money. So we went and bought them businesses, and we've struggled with it, but we've tried to get them started providing for themselves. And that ministry, if you want to call it that, it has grown to now we are in one way or another supporting more than 120 women and children. And that's microfinance. Those are they're not loans, they're grants that we give. We go down there and we take them shopping. You need an oven. Let's say you want to make, buns and sell them. You want to make biscuits. Okay. We'll buy you an oven. We'll get you the gas tank. We'll get you the hose. We'll set it up in your house. And now you have a business. It's a tiny business, but it's a business. Oh, you want to cut hair? Great. We'll buy you a set of clippers. We'll buy you a set of, scissors. We'll, buy you the durables that you need to do that job and help you buy the consumables the first time. By doing that, what you're doing is you're giving people dignity instead of dependence. And if we really care, we'll stop feeding the monster that is international foreign aid, and start insisting on real solutions that will actually fix the problem. Now, listen, bureaucracies that feed on people's suffering rarely want that suffering to end. So if Hamas or the United Nations or the World Food Program or UNICEF gets paid to help people who are suffering, I'm not going to be so cynical as to say the people who work there go to work every day going, man, I hope more people suffer today because I really want more people to suffer. No, not at all. I've met many of those people. I know them personally. And I can tell you the people who work for those agencies have good hearts and they truly want to help people. But it's just so easy to approach it with a paternalistic view and to say, well, since you're poor, you're obviously dumb, and this is the sort of condescension that you run into from aid agencies. So you're poor, so you obviously don't know how to take care of yourself, and so we're going to do that for you. And there's one saying that has really changed my approach to how to help people and when to help people. And that's something that Connie and I say to each other on a regular basis. And that is, honey, these people have been solving their own problems for a long time before we showed up. They didn't need us before we got here. They were solving their own problems. So if we're going to get involved in helping these people, whoever these people are, then we need to think about how to make this a short-term, long-term agreement. What I mean is, we want to support you for the long term, but we only want to give you money for the short term in order to get you to the point where you don't need us to give you money anymore. That is a very, very difficult needle to thread because it's so much easier to be dependent. It's so much easier just to text your donors and say, hey, could you give us some more money? Hey, we're hungry. We're out of food. We're out of this. We're out of that. Than to actually do the hard work of providing for yourself. And so it's kind of heart-wrenching sometimes for us when we're working with these girls in Colombia because we've had to cut them off. Say, I'm sorry, we're not going to send you any more money. We've got you set up in a business. We've got you licensed. We've got you all the materials and supplies you need to do your business. It's your turn to take it from here and sink or swim. And we get the longest, saddest sob stories. Just this one more time. I'll never ask you again. Please, just this one more time. No, it doesn't work like that. And you have to sort of harden your heart a little bit and just say, this is the most loving thing I can do for you. It's to stop supporting you. Make you go out and do it for yourself so that you can reclaim your dignity. It's so important. But so few people actually want to do it. Okay, how are we doing on time? Folks, go over to chuckholton.com if you don't mind. We put articles up after these lives over there where we have all the important salient points and statistics in that article, and that certainly helps. And I want to spend the last portion of this before we get to the questions just talking about how we do it right. Because Gaza is a perfect picture of how to do it wrong. Even the GHF is a stopgap measure. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is doing a much better job at getting aid to Gazans without giving it to Hamas than the UN is. It's much safer. It's much more efficient. It's much quicker. They're doing a great job at it. However, those people have to come back again tomorrow and get more food, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. The GHF is not giving people the wherewithal to provide for themselves. And in reality, looking at Gaza, look, Gaza is not, everybody's always said Gaza is completely overpopulated. And really, it's not. It's not overpopulated. It's just underdeveloped. They've been given plenty of money to develop a Singapore-like area inside Gaza. I mean, they could have made Gaza look like Singapore with the amount of money they were getting. And instead, they used it to turn it into a military base to attack Israel. Now that military base is being dismantled, bulldozed, and broken down. What gets rebuilt there? This is where it gets very important for us to think clearly about, why are the Gazans even there? Gaza is not a garden spot. It's almost impossible to grow a garden spot in Gaza. Now, there are some, palm trees and, some agriculture for sure. But by and large, Gaza is not a nice place to live. Super hot, super dry, dusty. And of course, there's all these, radical jihadists that live there, which sort of takes away from the ambiance a little bit. So it's not a nice place. Now, with 2.2 million people in Gaza, they could all live and they could all have jobs and good life as long as they have some sort of income coming in from outside Gaza. Some Gazans have figured out how to work remotely. We saw that bodybuilder kid the other day who's doing personal training with people in other countries and somehow getting paid for it through PayPal or something like that. So he's able to support himself, make some money that way. Probably doesn't take much to support yourself in Gaza. And if Gaza is going to be redeveloped, the Israelis and the United States and all the people who are going to be paying for the redevelopment, you can bet the United States is going to be on the hook to pay for that, a large part of it. We need to think real hard about why people should even be living there at all. Because look, if you cannot provide for yourself, be self-sufficient, and that doesn't mean that you've got to be able to grow all your own food or anything like that and be completely independent of any external country. No, it just means that you've got to have the ability and the skill, the education to do business in such a way that it creates exports and imports for your country, to allow things to be exported and imported. Now, Israel has made it difficult for goods to get imported into Gaza because so many of those goods are filled with contraband, weapons and explosives and stuff like that, that Israel has to inspect the goods that go into Gaza. But I'm not talking necessarily about physical goods. I'm talking more about digital goods, digital imports and exports, like this kid who's doing personal training for people in Europe, right? The people who are going to live permanently in Gaza after this is all over need to be very strongly encouraged to find ways to get out and make a living and take care of themselves. So as we look at what it will take to rebuild Gaza. First of all, do we want to rebuild Gaza, or do we want to just say, you know what? If you want to live there, then you're going to have to figure out a way to make enough money to build yourself a house or to start your business or whatever. But, the world wants to be compassionate, wants to help. So, okay, would it be better to train those people to stay in Gaza, which is in ruins, to live among the rubble, pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and get an education? Should we start trade schools or computer learning centers or something like that in Gaza for young people to come? Well, if we did, right now, the Gazans are still so backwards in their mindset that they would probably go and blow that place up. This is something that we've seen across the world with aid, is that when people don't have to pay for something, then they don't appreciate it. They just figure, well, it appeared here magically with nobody's time and effort. So if we wreck it, it'll appear here again. Somebody will come and fix it. I've given you in the past many descriptions of how that works. PC says, make Gaza a Christian-only place. Yeah, good luck with that. I wouldn't want to live there. But instead of giving them, food, why don't we just give them freedom? Why don't we just say, open the gates, and anybody that wants to leave can leave? Now, you can't come to Israel, but you can go somewhere else. It would be cheaper for the world body to offer free plane tickets, build an airstrip just inside the Kerem Shalom crossing. Actually bulldoze an airstrip in there. Charter aircraft to France, because France obviously wants a lot of, they want to establish a Palestinian state. Well, let's make it in Marseille. How about? Let's make Marseille Palestine. The UK, Keir Starmer wants to recognize Palestine. Great. Let's put people on airplanes and fly them to Wales. Last time I was in Cardiff, it looked like an Arab country. So let's send them over there. You'd hardly notice a difference. And we can call Wales Palestine from now on. Look, this isn't as crazy as it sounds. Why should it sound crazy to allow people who want to emigrate from a failed state and go somewhere and get a better life? Why does it sound crazy to allow them to do that? Why is it that the same groups, the same people, the same political tribe, the left, Democrats in the United States, who thought it was a mandatory, it's urgently mandatory for everybody from the third world to come to the United States because they have a right to leave those countries where they're being persecuted and make a better life somewhere else. Never mind that they had to pass through 10 different countries to get to the United States, all of which would have made fine places for them to live. But no, the Democrats in the United States were just adamant. We have to allow these millions of people into the United States because it's their human right. And now those very same Democrats are criticizing Israel's plan to open a humanitarian corridor and allow Gazans to leave. Now it's not a human right anymore. Why is that? I think it's pretty clear. It's because they don't care about the Gazans. They just want to use the Gazans as a weapon to aim at Israel. Now, I think I've said that about 10 times in this live, and I hope that by doing so, you have come to an understanding that that is what Gaza is all about. And ending the war is not going to fix Gaza. Rebuilding Gaza is not going to fix Gaza, because the fundamental precept of why Gaza exists and why the United Nations continues to call everybody in Gaza refugees, even though it's been 3 generations almost since their grandfathers or great-grandfathers were driven out of what is now Israel. It's the only people group in the world that in which being a refugee is hereditary. So I want you to really nail that down. I want you to understand this is what Gaza is all about. Okay, we're going to go to the questions here. I had it all set up and then I clicked off that page, honey. So this one's my fault. Sorry. Let me get the link up. Slow internet. Okay, here we go. Come on. Loading, loading, loading. Hit that like button while you're waiting, folks. There it is. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast, please. All right, let's get to the questions. Still loading. Well, it looks like there's a bunch of them. Okay. Lord Peanut the second. Always good for a few good questions. What happens if Hamas doesn't do what the Arab League tells them? Also, could this be a trick with a big attack coming? Hamas is putting out the word, and Iran and Hezbollah are all saying, making noises like, if we all just coordinate and gang up on Israel, we can destroy Israel. And Israel's like, bring it. I mean, it's not going to happen. Now, I don't think Hamas will do what the Arab League tells them to, because they're not going to just give up. They are getting what they want out of this war, and that is publicity. Suffering for the Gazan people, that is a feature, not a bug, in this plan. On IB News, a senior Israeli official states Hamas shut down the negotiations. So is this over? For the time being, it is. For the time being, it's over. And what this is going to lead to is Israel declaring sovereignty over large portions of Gaza, and the part of Gaza where the Gazans can live is going to get much, much smaller. Scott asks, why does Israel always get demonized for doing above and beyond humanitarian acts, but not a peep about Christians being slaughtered in Syria? Thank you. Rhetorical question, I get it. But you're right. That is exactly the case. And I think it's because they're God's chosen people. And when people deny God, God turns them over to a depraved mind. One of the first things they're going to do when they are in that state is go after God's chosen people. That's my belief. Verilyn Plender says, do I contact our financial advisor about preserved gold? It's not premium gold, it's preserved gold, or not? We've had Capital Finance for 26 years now. First thing I would do, yeah, if you're in your 80s, you definitely want to be diversifying away from stocks, probably. So, no, contact Preserve Gold. So either text 50505 to, I'm sorry, text Chuck, my name, Chuck, to 50505, or go to the link that is in the chat here, or in the description of this video. But Verilyn, yeah, you can contact your financial advisor, but you might want to get some details from Preserve Gold first. That's my guess. Tina asked, if they're forced to leave, who will agree to take the citizens Can we provide stipends to the countries who agree to take them? We're actually in talks right now with countries like Libya, Ethiopia, and there was one other country I don't remember off the top of my head, to take them. Egypt is dead set. We're not taking them. Egypt would be the logical place to put them. Egypt or Jordan. But both of those countries are like, nope, don't ask us, not here, not listening, la, 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 la. A chill guy asks, is it realistic to move that many people who don't want to leave? I'm not talking about moving the people who don't want to leave. I'm talking about moving the people who do want to leave. And yes, it's realistic to move people who do want to go. That's just a matter of logistics. Now, getting people who don't want to go to leave would be much harder and would be illegal. That's called ethnic cleansing. So, Israel is coming as close as any modern conflict I've ever seen to doing what I say America should have done in the war on terror. And rather than going in and spending 20 years doing nation building, which didn't build a nation, giving away scads of blood and treasure, we should have just said to Afghanistan, you support Al-Qaeda, you support Osama bin Laden, so we're going to come reboot your country for you. And we're going to come in and leave your country pretty much a smoking ruin. We're going to kill all your leaders. And we're going to do our best to avoid civilian casualties in the process. And then we're going to leave. We're going to just pick up and leave. And if you want our help, you can ask for it and we'll give you advice. Don't expect a lot of money. But you can rebuild your country any way you want. We don't care. Doesn't have to be a democracy. You can make it whatever you want it to be. But as long as it's not a threat to America. Because the moment it becomes a threat to America, then we will come back in and we will reboot your country for you again. And then we will leave again. And we'll play this game as many times as you want to go. So Israel has pretty much rebooted Gaza, killed all their leadership. Getting rid of Hamas, killing every last one of the Hamas is going to be a very long-term project. And so it may come to a point where Israel decides, we're not done killing Hamas, but we are going to pull our troops out and let the Gazans do their thing. Let the Gazans start to rebuild. And we're going to have drones overhead. We're going to have listening devices and all sorts of sneaky little things like that, blanketing Gaza. And the very moment that we see a guy in a black ski mask or a guy carrying an AK-47 or, God forbid, a guy opening up a missile silo, then we're going to, first of all, smoke that guy. And secondly, we'll come back in and kill all the people that are leaders and reboot your country again and leave it a smoking ruin again. And then we'll leave again. That might be the cheapest way for Israel to take care of this problem. And this is different than mowing the grass. This is not that policy that Israel had of just every once in a while going in. No, this is far beyond mowing the grass. This is digging up the grass, bulldozing the yard, digging up the topsoil, and setting everything else on fire, and then leaving. And you guys worry about survival for a while, but the moment you start to be a threat to us, the moment one of your leaders makes the mistake of saying something like, death to Israel, expect Israeli warplanes to be dive bombing on your location in minutes. And we're not just going to bomb the guy who said it. We're going to take out every government building. We're going to take out some critical infrastructure. Anything that is a threat militarily is all going to get wiped out. We'll bring troops back in, bulldoze it all down, and then we'll leave. Have a nice day. And we'll do this as many rounds as you want to do it till you get the message. Now, I think most of the Arab world is getting the message because that's what Israel is pursuing. And the rest of the Arab world is like, whew, well, we really want Gazans to stay in Gaza so that at some point when this all dies down, we can resume using Gazans' suffering as a weapon against Israel. But they don't want to continue to support Hamas or Hezbollah or anything like that because they've seen what happened to Iran and they don't want that to happen to them. Lebanon is all but on its hands and knees begging Hezbollah right now to just lay down its arms and leave. The new president of Lebanon, who looks like a Bond villain, he's a Christian guy though. What goes on TV, he's about as interesting as watching paint dry, but he goes on TV and gives these long speeches in which nothing on his face or anything moves. It's kind of wacky. Makes you wonder if he's actually AI. And he says, we have a great idea. Maybe the military that belongs to our country should be the only armed force in our country. Maybe we shouldn't have another armed force in our country that's at odds with the prosperity and flourishing of people in Lebanon. That's an amazing feat of logic on his part. Hezbollah, for their part, is saying, we're not giving up. Our stuff is only to destroy Israel. It's not to cause problems in Lebanon. And we're not threatening anybody. I mean, there's his speech, the new head of Hezbollah, his speech is just so ridiculous because he's like, we're not threatening anybody, but our weapons are only to kill Israelis. What? Okay. Stephen Fortier said, did you see Tucker Carlson's latest show that dropped this morning about Gaza? I saw that it came out. I don't watch Tucker Carlson, and you shouldn't either. The special operations guy that Tucker had on his show that is making all these claims about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been proven to be a fraud. They've got the receipts. I mean, GHF released everything. And it's abundantly clear, if you go read that paperwork, that this guy was a complete farce. I mean, he's just a scammer of the highest order. Chuck, why does nobody care about the Christians in Nigeria suffering? PC asks. I care. They don't get a lot of press because they can't be weaponized. See, I get these questions so often. I figured I'd do a whole live about why that happens. Nobody's reporting on Yemen, Ethiopia, Burma, Sudan, Somalia, Congo, you go on and on and on. Nobody's reporting about those places because those places can't be weaponized against the Jews. That's your answer. Nobody wants to hear about Ukraine. I thought about going back to Ukraine next week, and I decided, you know what? Nobody wants to hear about Ukraine. Every time I talk about Ukraine, all I get is hate mail. I've spoken myself blue in the face, giving you the ground truth from Ukraine. And people are just over it. They don't care. So why should I, as a journalist, go to Ukraine or Somalia or Sudan or Ethiopia or Yemen or any of those places and report on the terrible things that are happening there if nobody cares? Because if I see my viewership drop in half because I'm not constantly banging the drum for Israel, well, that's you, the viewers, sending me a message and saying, we're not going to watch if you're not talking about Israel. Now, I do talk about a lot of other things, but, and it's not all about the numbers, but in a way, those are still important because that's how I fund all of this. That's how I pay my 6 employees to keep this thing running. And so if the people want bread and circuses, then I'll give them bread and circuses to a point. Now, I went to Syria for a month this year. Nobody really cared much about that. I went to Burma for a month last year, permanently injured myself on that tour. And the YouTube channel, no, it was like people just, a collective yawn. People are very interested in Gaza, and it pains me that they're not more interested in Christians being persecuted here in Armenia, or in Christians being persecuted in Burma, Christians being persecuted in Nigeria. I've been all of those places and have reported on all of those things. So I guess all of us need to look in the mirror a little bit, is the answer to that question. Anne Marie says, praying for the hostages and starving Palestinians who have nothing. Okay, thank you, Anne Marie. Me too. Chuck, do you have any solutions to the Gaza citizens? Yes, leave if you can. Try releasing the hostages. I know it's a crazy idea, but if you're tired of Israel blowing stuff up and bulldozing your house, try releasing the hostages. Believe me, there are plenty of people in Gaza who know where those hostages are, who could assist Israel in getting them safely out. The families that are holding the hostages are just everyday Gazan families. One of them was a doctor that worked in the hospital in Gaza, and he had a hostage in his house, locked up. So it's hard to feel sorry for them when you know that's the case. Now, there are children, and it just kills me that there are parents in the world that are so irresponsible, that are so selfish, that are so consumed by hate, that they would rather see their children starve than turn over hostages that don't belong to you. But that's Gaza. That's where we are. So try releasing the hostages. That's my best advice for people in Gaza. Michelle Antico says, isn't that what the UN does everywhere? They take aid. The aid winds up in the area's guerrilla forces, and they sell the aid to people for astronomical amounts. Yes, I've seen that all over the world. It's not just the UN. You know, Operation Christmas Child, Samaritan's Purse. I saw a whole bunch of their Christmas boxes for sale in the marketplace in rural Kenya one time. I asked the local missionary about it, and he said, yeah, the warlords go to the places where they distribute these, the schools and stuff, where they distribute these to the kids. And as soon as the Samaritan's Purse people leave, the warlords take all of those boxes of presents away from the children and sell them in the marketplace and use the money to buy weapons that they used to go kill people with. So there's that. That's not really widespread with Operation Christmas Child specifically, but it does happen. What advice for people who want to donate for food for Gaza? Does the money reach where it's needed, or could Hamas get their hands on it? Okay. If you listen to this entire thing and you still want to give food to Gaza, you missed the point. First of all, there is a massive, massive scam industry that sets up GoFundMes and, Give, Send, Goes and Patreons and everything like that, and says, donate money here and we'll give it to the starving people in Gaza. You see ads for it on YouTube on my show. I don't put them there, but YouTube puts them there. There are WhatsApp channels and Telegram channels coming out of Gaza where everyday Gazans are saying, what is it with this GoFundMe that they've raised, $5 million for Gaza. Nobody in Gaza knows anything about that organization, and we haven't seen a dime of that money. It's all a complete scam. There are literally universities in Nigeria that train young men, they call them Yahoo boys, about how to scam people out of money by creating fake profiles and having a fake need. And you'll see Yahoo boys driving around Lagos in Maseratis because they make millions of dollars doing that. So don't give money to online things like that. One of the reasons why I started the Hot Zone was because I was frustrated at seeing how aid gets diverted and how it gets used poorly. And I thought the best way, if you're going to help somebody, is to help them directly and not go through some other organization that's going to have a bunch of overhead where the CEO makes $900,000 a year or it's anything like that. Find a way to give it directly to the people in need. And so I thought, aha, I go and see the people who are in need and report on them. So if I start this podcast, we can, through the magic of technology, set up a system whereby people can donate directly to the people in need. And we have given away hundreds of thousands of dollars from Hot Zonians directly to needy people around the globe. And we continue to do that. So that is and very often I like to put together trips and bring people, my viewers, personally. And I've done trips here to Armenia. Every time we do a trip to Armenia, we personally find somebody who is in need, and our group takes a collection and helps them out. Refugees and war heroes and stuff like that. We've done a couple of tours, several tours now, to Colombia to take people directly to meet the girls that we support in Colombia. So if you want to go on one of those trips, sign up. We'll announce them. We have a trip going to Armenia next June. Highly recommend it. Come see for yourself what the need is and help directly if you can. Chuck, what's the most disturbing crisis from either war or natural disaster you've seen in person? The earthquake in Haiti in 2010. 250,000 people dead, and there was no place to put them but the middle of the street because all the buildings had collapsed. And so there were piles of bodies, thousands, rotting in the hot sun in the middle of all the streets in Port-au-Prince and Léogâne and all around. And it wasn't just like most of the wars I go to, it's mostly military-age males that get whacked. No, with this, it was women and children and old people and beautiful young ladies, and they were all dead, just dead. So that's been the most disturbing one that I've seen. But I've seen a lot of death and destruction in 23 years of doing this job. Chuck, can you see anyone ever protesting for people other than Palestinians like Kurds, Druze, Yemen kids, or Sudanese? No, I'm not seeing that, other than I've seen Kurds demonstrating for Kurds, right? But not people that are not part of their diaspora. Trudy Macy says, Chuck, is it true, as reported in the New York Times, the number of dead in the enclave has reached more than 60,000, a majority of them civilians, according to the United Nations? Where does the United Nations get their information? They get their information from the Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas. And there have been lots of open source investigations that have proven that the Gaza Health Ministry lies. So all of that reporting is predicated on lies. Massive, massive lies. And it's intentional. It's not, it is intentional. Let's just leave it at that. Anne Marie says, can't they precision drop supplies? No, they can't. Because you can't steer a parachute remotely. Daniel says, are you aware of the Clinton Foundation scam that stole all the aid money? Yeah, I am, very much. And every Haitian can tell you about that. Coeur de Rose says, Gazan families used to get lifelong aid from Iran if one of their members gets killed in the conflict. Does that still happen? Yes, it does. Not just in Gaza, but in Judea and Samaria as well. Chuck, did you notice any other journalists in Gaza? Yeah, actually, I was with a group of journalists when I went in. We all went in. There was probably 30 of us. What? I can't read it. Trudy Macy, 73. Eric Tonalen says, is it true that Hamas rewards those who do jihad? That is true. KP1 says, how do you get people to change their minds about the aid? It used to be shameful. Now it seems to be a boastful way to live. Boy, that's a good question. Like I say, it's much easier for them to just accept aid and become dependent. There's people in the United States that are just sickening in how they glorify the fact that they live on aid and don't work. Those people should be cut off completely. AJ Ward says, does Hamas supply the restaurants in Gaza with aid meant for the people? No. Hamas sells supplies that were supposed to be given to the people to whoever will buy it, and people buy it and sell it in the restaurants in Gaza. What about the 49 Christians killed in Congo? Yep, just happened. PCS, they need to go to Muslim nations. Why will they not take in their Palestinian brothers? Because they want to use the Palestinian brothers as a weapon against Israel. That is the reason. Therese Morton says, are you saying they're not allowed to leave if they wanted to right now? That's true. I mean, there's no way for them to leave because Gazans cannot, there's no crossing by which they could leave unless Israel opens a humanitarian crossing and allows people to come through Israel to get out of the country. Maybe puts them on buses and takes them to Jordan or something. Or Egypt opens the Rafah crossing with the coordination of Israel and lets them directly into Egypt. Both of those are fraught with risk. Okay. So no, they can't leave if they want to. All right, folks, that's all I got for today. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for watching the Hot Zone. And again, please make sure you like and share this. Go over to chuckholton.com. And so the 3 books that I mentioned will be, I'll list those over at chuckholton.com for you if you want to go get those books. What? Oh, Amy made an Amazon storefront for that. So I guess there's a link to it somewhere. And I am going to be making a video to thank everybody for getting us to 200,000 subs. What you're going to want to do is watch that video and then comment below that video. And all the people who commented will be entered in a giveaway. We're going to give away some prizes. So be on the lookout for that. I'll do that tonight or tomorrow. Okay? Thank you for watching.